What's up guys, another RP video. Just wanted to do a follow-up on yesterday's video where I talked about some of the things that I would have done differently if I could turn back the clock, and a lot of it was debt based, taking out more leverage and having these items that would garner female attention at an earlier age, when I was 23, 24, 25, whatever. Now let me expand on that, because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions. Oh, you're just gonna live this life of leveraged out, it's all going to be on credit, you're not going to own anything a lot. Well, there's a fine line between the two, and I would say one of the things that you can do with the vehicles is buying vehicles that are 5 to 7 years old, and then if you took a loan out on that, which is what a lot of people do. And I always looked at it as like, people are having all these payments, they have this encumbrance kind of behind them and stuff. I'd be better off just driving an older car and drive it into the ground. It's driving fine, so on and so forth. But it's like, well, what are you doing? You're trying to conserve your resources to attract women. Let me reemphasize this again. Everything in this world and everything that we do is for women. Go back, I'll put a link in the description below if you want to watch that video again, and I think it'll make a lot of sense to you. So I'd say like driving a vehicle that's 5 to 7 years old, it's pretty much through its depreciation curve. Now the last 2 years have been this weird, odd situation in the used car market because of chip shortages for the new cars, which then put pressure on the used car market, so on and so forth. Weird situation, but in general terms, your cars that are 5 to 7 years old have pretty much hit most of their depreciation. Now, could you go for the brand new car, do this lease, and maybe the terms are conducive to where you're able to drive this brand spanking new vehicle, and it's not that much more, or the difference is going to allow you more traction, more access, and allow you to be more around more beautiful women. Yes, that is true. Now I know what I'm going to get. A lot of people are going to say, well, what's your goal with this whole thing? Are you just trying to like be with a bunch of different women? That's not really ever per se the goal. I mean, it might be like at some point in guys' life, but I think that most guys, if you talk to them, if they were with a hot enough woman, they will lock that down. And what's happening to a lot of men now is the juice isn't worth the squeeze, essentially. So the level of woman that you have fairly readily access to, fairly decent access to, is just far, far below what you would ever commit to and commit that many resources to. If she's hot, like she's a 9 out of 10, she's fit, she's youthful, she's fertile, all that kind of stuff, you're going to be like, this is awesome. Very content with this, completely content with this. The modern dating scene has actually turned men into savages. I've made other videos about that now, but men and women are going opposite directions, and their perception of what they deserve and what they can obtain is not on the same page. Not on the same page. That being said, going back to the topic, I don't want to get off topic. By garnering these resources and buying maybe a slightly older boat, maybe a few years old, buying a slightly older car, a few years old, you're going to get past some of that depreciation, and you're able to buy a higher grade of vehicle. I'm going to use the BMW i8 as an example. Now, they made that 2014 through essentially 2020. It's not made anymore. Sort of a plug-in hybrid concept cars with the butterfly doors and all that kind of stuff. It's going to turn some heads. It's going for around $70,000. Now, if you made payments and you stretch this out for 5 years or something like that, you would probably pay, and I'd have to do a loan calculator, and interest rates have went up and stuff like that. But if you got a more reasonable kind of interest rate that would have been going on a few years ago, or let's say even like, especially even 6 or 8 months ago, your payment would be a lot less, and you could afford that, and it would turn a lot of heads and stuff like that. Now, this goes counterintuitive to the way I've been conditioned. I grew up, and my parents were from a long lineage of cheapskates, so therefore I had this very frugal mindset, and that's why I was very, very frugal with my money, and would not just frivolously take out all these loans and be making payments on everything. That ultimately, I would say, did partially stunt my ability to be around more beautiful women of this upper tier. One of the chicks that I'm talking to now, I just found out that her dad owns a Lamborghini. Now, that's new information. She has been very, very hard to communicate with, reciprocate communication. And it's like, well, maybe it's just you, Brian. No, it's everyone. She is doing that to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're 22, if you're 25, if you're 30, if you're 40. Doesn't matter. Those chicks are hard to access for every single person, and your best ability to do it is going to be this convergence of the best game, you know, from very different angles, life of abundance, as far as like you're going to have to talk to multiple people. If it looks like you're so desperate that she's the end all be all, it's sort of an unattractive feature. So here's one of the things that I've learned about game is that this whole thing of like leveraging out and having access to all these, you know, things like the car, the nice place downtown, all this kind of stuff, you have to be careful with it, because you don't want to lead with your wallet, but you want to have those resources and be able to show those resources. Because let me tell you this, you can't underestimate the hypergamous nature of women. They're always looking for the bigger, better deal, and if you don't look like you're anything, and they're always asking these qualifying questions. If they're asking the qualifying question, that's a good thing, because they're at least interested in your look. They see your look and then they're saying, wait, what do you actually do? It's an annoying question, but at least they're interested. They liked your look, they liked your face, they liked your height, so on and so forth. So you have to kind of learn these things over time. It takes time to learn this game, and the guys with the best game were broke at some point. They were out of money, they had their money in other investments, they had no money. The best guys with game were broke at some point. These kids who grew up with rich parents, they don't have any game. They lead with their wallet, they've always had access to resources by virtue that their parents were rich, and so that ends up being a big part of their game. Now, that being said, it's just like, well, you're attracting the wrong person if she's into that. Well, all women are into that. That's why this whole thing of geomaxing and going to another country, going to the Ukraine, going to this, you're still tapping into the hypergamous nature of women, except you're in another country where your money's going to go that much further, maybe 4 or 5 times as far as it would have. You go over there with $100,000, and obviously Ukraine right now is war torn and stuff like that, and in a bad situation. So I'm not saying going over there now. So you go down to Colombia with $100,000. You're gonna be rich. You're gonna be staying in baller pads. You're gonna look like a boss, driving a nice car. You're gonna be a factor of, you know, whatever, 5 or 10 times what the general population is. So you're gonna stand out against the competition, and that's all what it is. It's all about competition. You guys look at the animal kingdom. I mentioned this last time. You see these beetles with like horns on, or you see like gorillas, they're all jacked and they're sparring, they're hitting each other. You see rams, they're going for the biggest horns, and they're slamming in each other. It's the same thing for humans. It's just a little bit more complexity to the game, and there's additional levels, and the game keeps changing because our technology keeps changing. You go back to innate primitive desires and stuff like that in tribal times. The man who was strong, could hunt, fish, commandeer the most resources, that's who got the chicks. And you know, some of those indicators are dialed in to women. It's programmed in evolutionarily that the taller men, the stronger men kind of thing, that is an attribute that they go after. So don't discount that, and don't discount the hypergamous nature. They want the guy bringing back all the fish, the guy bringing back the deer. He's the hunter, he's the apex predator, he's protecting the tribe, he's the best warrior, he's the best brave. All these things have been lofted up in our societies in the past. It's the same thing now. And what we need to realize is that what's the best way to showcase that without really kind of expending all of our resources, for instance. And that's why I go back to the cars that are 5 to 7 years old. They've passed their depreciation curve. You're not going to lose as much money on those on a resale situation. And unless you really know these models of various different cars, if they don't know the difference between an A4 and an S8, you might be able to kind of get away with, maybe you drive the A4 that's 5 years old. Then you try to level up to a newer S8, or you level up to the BMW i8, vertical doors. You go initially for the Lamborghini Gallardo, then you level up to the Lamborghini Aventador. Doors open this way. So, and again, I want to re-emphasize the guys that people that say, "Oh, nobody cares about the car," and so they do, they do. And I was very, very content driving a car into the ground. That was, I was saving money, I was planning for the future, all that kind of stuff. No longer do you have these situations where most women are not getting with guys who are 5, 10, 15, 20 years older than them. They're just not. To be able to do that, like a Leonardo DiCaprio scenario or something like that, you have to be in the upper 0.00001 percentile of status, looks, wealth, so on and so forth. Your general guy, just to tell them, "Oh, just focus on your grind, bro. Just focus on your grind," and suddenly you're going to be 40 years old and you're just going to get this dime piece who's 21 or 22 who wants to have kids. That's going to be a dead end in this game. Keep in mind, this whole thing is a game. This whole world is a game. There's multiple levels of gamification in everything that we do. So that being said, going back, I want to touch on the thing of like, well, what is the ultimate goal? Well, the ultimate goal is that you're going to have children and you're going to perpetuate your genetic code. That is the ultimate goal. Now, some guys will say, "Well, I don't want to have kids." Well, why don't you want to have kids? And a lot of times it's because they feel like it's going to encumber their life and their experiences. But if you had unlimited resources, well, then why not have kids when you're whatever, 25, 26, 27, 30, whenever? Why wouldn't you have kids? Because you could have other people helping take care of them and stuff like that, and it wouldn't encumber your experiences, because the kids could come along. You could go to, whatever. You could go to Italy. You could go to Croatia. You could go, you could go anywhere. You have unlimited resources. The kids don't really necessarily hamper your experience to travel and experience life. So, but that's a lot of times what people are actually saying. "Well, I don't want to have kids," because they don't want the burden, they can't afford it, so on and so forth. You just have to make more money. You have to commandeer more resources. That's really what it comes down to. So, just backing up, your timing has to be right if you're going to leverage out. You don't want to buy a house right now when the housing market is collapsing. You don't want to do that. You have to be smart with that. Maybe it makes more sense to rent here for 6 months, a year, maybe even 2 years. Find another situation. Maybe it does make sense to kind of buy in the future and leverage out. Maybe it makes sense to make a 20% down payment. And again, you got to give a take. You got to extend your resources as far as they can, and more and more so now that they're just printing so much money. You're better off kind of like having a stake in these resources, even if you're leveraged out, than just totally trying to only buy stuff that you can actually afford, because the government can't afford the money that they're printing. Nobody can afford any of this stuff. It's all just built on debt. It's just one big house of cards. Now it will collapse and there will be an opportunity, and then you can soak up some of that and leverage out, and then hopefully ride up the next cycle. So timing is going to be an issue, and then be smart with the vehicles and the assets that you purchase and leverage out with. There's going to be a lot of people, obviously, in this housing crash that leveraged a primary residence to buy other rentals, and they kept doing that. They daisy chained them together, and they could get washed out like a house of cards. There's going to be a lot of people that are doing that, and they're going to have to reset the deck, and that's just part of the game, guys. So that being said, I would say that your best bet is to make sure that you look like a boss when you're in this, whatever, the earlier the better. If you're 22 and you look like a boss and you're driving supercars, more the better. That's better than if you were 32 driving the supercar. If you're 25, 26, 27, you really got to get into that frame of getting there early in your 20s, because suddenly when you get to your 30s, that is another hurdle you have to pass. They're going to have that rebuttal. "Oh, you're old. Oh, you're 30. And in their mindset, a 22-year-old girl, if you're 30, that additional 8 years is a significant fraction of her life. And so she says stupid stuff like, oh, I was just in junior high 8 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're thinking in your head, you're not in junior high right now. But unfortunately, a lot of times their mindset is back in their earlier years. A lot of times when they were 16, they don't actually progress because they can get so far on their looks. So their personality and their interests and stuff like that oftentimes won't evolve because they can lay so heavily on their looks. They can just ride the coattails of society based on their looks, and that's just the human nature. These men want the youth and the fertility, and for that given time, they do have unlimited power. Hopefully you guys liked that video. Please like this video. Please subscribe. I'm going to keep rolling out with more. See you guys.